I met Laura 8 years ago at my cousin's engagement party. She was there with one of the bridesmaids, just tagging along because she didn't have plans that night. I remember she wore this navy dress with tiny gold dots that shimmered when she moved. She had this calm confidence about her, like someone who didn't need to say much to own the room. I'd never been the type to make a move, but something about her pulled me in. I ended up standing next to her in line for drinks and cracked some lame joke about wine spritzers, fully expecting silence. Instead, she laughed, this full, honest laugh, and we ended up talking the rest of the night. Somewhere around 1 a.m., we left the party together to find pancakes and coffee at this little 24-hour spot a few blocks away. It became a tradition. That place still knows our order by heart. We dated for a couple years, slow and steady. We moved in together after one, and it just felt easy. Not because life itself was easy, but because being with her was. We'd do Sunday mornings with music playing while she gardened and I messed around with the grill. Little things, like grocery runs turning into mini adventures, or how she'd leave notes in my lunchbox just because. She had this way of folding herself into my life without ever feeling like she was trying. Like she belonged there all along. When I proposed, it was back at that diner, same booth, same time of night. I had this whole speech planned, but ended up just saying, "I don't want any more midnights without you." She said yes before I could finish. We've been married 6 years now. No kids, just our golden retriever Max, who we spoil like a child anyway. We live in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs just outside Charlotte. Nothing extravagant, just a clean 2-story home with a small porch swing and rose bushes Laura insists on keeping alive even in winter. She has a knack for making things grow. She works in marketing, from home mostly, which she loves because it means more time in comfy clothes and more time with Max. I'm in logistics, pretty straightforward stuff, but it keeps me busy and gives me a sense of structure, which I've always liked. Our routines have settled into something that feels lived in and warm. Mornings start with her sleepy smile and the smell of coffee. Evenings usually mean a walk with Max, then cooking something together or ordering in and binge-watching some old series we've already seen 3 times. We're those people who pause the TV to have entire conversations. The kind who argue over who gets the last scoop of ice cream but end up splitting it down the middle. This is what life looks like with her, cozy, familiar, and filled with small joys. And if I'm being honest, I still get that same feeling I had the first time I saw her, like I'd found something rare and didn't even know I'd been looking for it. One of the things I've always appreciated about Laura is how easily we fell into our rhythm. I know that sounds simple, but when you talk to other couples, you realize how rare it is. We didn't need to try too hard to align, we just did. It wasn't a fairy tale or some whirlwind romance, but more like 2 puzzle pieces that just fit. We're both naturally independent, which helped a lot. We could go off and do our own thing and still feel connected. On weekends, she'd be outside pruning her rose bushes or reworking the layout of our backyard garden, her pride and joy, while I was in the garage organizing tools I probably didn't need or catching a game in the den. But somehow, every evening we'd end up side by side, dinner plates in our laps, watching the same reruns of The Office like it was our first time seeing them. Our home isn't flashy, 2 stories, warm paint tones, slightly creaky floorboards in the hallway, but it's ours. We painted every wall ourselves when we moved in, argued over furniture styles, she won, every time, and built a little world that felt safe. She picked out the light fixtures and the rugs. I picked the couch and the grill. Balance. She has a way of making everything feel intentional. The way she folds laundry, the way she prepares meals, even how she organizes her workspace in the home office, it's all meticulous, thoughtful. Sometimes I'll walk past the room and catch her in that zone, one hand in her hair, eyes narrowed at her laptop, and I still feel proud. Like I get to be married to someone who's not just capable, but completely in her element. We don't fight much. Not because we agree on everything, far from it, but because we respect each other's space. If she needs to vent, she knows I'll listen. If I need to shut down after work, she lets me decompress before nudging me back to the world. We do Friday night takeout, always from the same Thai place. She orders green curry. I get the pad CEW. We share spring rolls and argue over whose dish is better, even though we've had the exact same debate every week for 5 years. There's something comforting in that routine. Predictability in the best way. Sometimes I'd find her sitting out on the porch in the evenings, legs curled up beneath her, reading a book or just scrolling through her phone, and I'd join her without saying anything. We'd just sit there together while the sun went down, Max lying at our feet, and for a while, everything felt exactly as it should. People always say that after a few years, the spark fades. I never felt that with Laura. The spark just changed. It settled into something quieter, steadier. Less like fireworks, more like the hum of a well-tuned engine. That's what love started to feel like to me, reliable. Familiar in the best possible way. And honestly, I thought that was a good thing. There's a kind of peace that comes from knowing someone inside and out. Laura and I had reached that point where communication didn't always require words. A glance across a crowded room, the way she'd touch my shoulder when passing by, the half-smile she gave when I forgot something obvious, it all meant something, and I understood her without needing her to explain. Our routines were never glamorous, but they were ours. Saturday mornings meant cleaning the house together, music playing through the Bluetooth speaker, always her playlists, full of indie folk and soft rock. She'd tie her hair up, hum while vacuuming, and I'd do the kitchen or fold laundry. We'd pause halfway through for coffee. Max usually sprawled across the living room rug, completely uninterested in our productivity. We didn't travel a lot, mostly local weekend trips, day drives to nearby lakes or mountain trails. Laura was always the planner. I handled logistics, but she handled the fun. Every trip came with a folder, yes, a literal folder, with itineraries, hotel confirmations, list of recommended restaurants. I teased her for it at first, but eventually it became one of those quirks I looked forward to. It meant she cared enough to make sure we made the most of our time together. Holidays were a big deal for her. She'd start decorating for Halloween in September, stringing up lights and putting out carved pumpkins, even if no kids came to the door. Christmas was next level. Laura had a spreadsheet of gifts, menus, and decor themes. I'd act like I was annoyed, but I secretly loved it. She made things feel festive, warm, alive. Our families are close, especially mine. My younger brother, Ben, was over a lot. He's the opposite of me, loud, always cracking jokes, more spontaneous than planned. Laura and Ben got along well, which I liked. She said he brought out her lighter side, and I agreed. He'd come by for football games or Sunday dinner, always leaving the place louder than it was when he arrived. I always appreciated how Laura made an effort to include him, remembering his favorite beer, laughing at his dumb stories. And then there was the garden. God, that garden. I swear she loved those rose bushes like they were our children. Every spring she'd spend hours prepping the soil, buying new tools, experimenting with different fertilizers. I installed extra lighting outside just so she could check on them at night. And when they bloomed, she'd drag me out there to admire them like it was the eighth wonder of the world. And honestly, sometimes it felt like it was. At night, it was usually just the three of us, me, her, and Max. A movie playing softly, Laura curled up next to me with her head on my shoulder. I'd run my fingers through her hair, and she'd eventually drift off, like clockwork. Those were my favorite hours. Just us, no noise, no stress. The world got quiet and felt okay for a little while. It never occurred to me to question any of it. Not then. Because when you've built a life that feels this solid, you don't go looking for cracks. I think it started with the little things. The kinds of things you brush off at first, because they don't scream problem, they just feel off. It was a Thursday night when I first noticed it. Laura and I had finished dinner, chicken stir-fry, her recipe, and she got up to do the dishes like always. I was scrolling through the news on my phone when I saw her walk into the hallway, still holding a wet plate, and glance at her phone with this weird half-smile. The kind you try to hide when you don't want someone to see it. I didn't say anything. She came back into the kitchen a few seconds later like nothing happened. That was the first moment I felt something. Not jealousy exactly, just a twitch of discomfort I couldn't explain. Then there was her phone. Laura never used to be glued to it. She's never been big on social media, and we both used to complain about how people couldn't hold a conversation without checking their screens. But lately, she'd be mid-conversation with me and suddenly get distracted, thumbing through her messages or tilting the screen away from me, not obviously, but just enough that I noticed. One night, I casually asked who she was texting so much. She smiled and said, "Oh, just work stuff. Campaign launch this week." Totally plausible. Except when I offered to help her prep the materials, she brushed it off. "It's all on my laptop. You wouldn't understand the platform." Fair enough. She's always been the expert when it comes to marketing, but something about the quickness of her answer rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious, insecure husband inventing problems where there are none. So I told myself she was just stressed, that I was reading into nothing, that this is what happens when you've been married a while. People have their own lives, their own pressures. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. It got worse a couple weeks later. We were getting ready for bed, brushing our teeth side by side, and I noticed she was wearing perfume. At 10:30 p.m. Just a subtle hint of it, but it was there. I joked, trying to seduce me or something? She laughed, tight, fake, and said, "No, I think it got on my sweater from earlier. I had a lunch meeting with a client. I let it go." But that night, she said she was too tired to talk. Rolled over and went to sleep while I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering why that small detail wouldn't stop echoing in my head. It's not like there was some dramatic moment, a lipstick stain, or a strange number on her phone. Just this slow drip of inconsistency. A story that didn't quite match what I saw. A laugh that didn't feel real. A presence that felt thinner. Like she was here, but already somewhere else. I hadn't said a word to her about any of this. Not yet. I kept thinking maybe I was just being paranoid, letting my imagination spiral. But something had shifted. And for the first time in our marriage, I started wondering. Who was Laura when I wasn't around? Something's changed between us, but I can't name it. That's the worst part. If there was a blow-up, a big fight, something loud or ugly, I think I'd almost prefer it. But there isn't. Just silence, and that silence has started to stretch. It's not that Laura is cold. She still kisses me goodbye. She still makes coffee most mornings. We still have dinner together, most nights at least. But there's a new kind of distance I can't ignore, like she's present, but her thoughts are always one room ahead of wherever she's standing. A few nights ago, I came home later than usual. Traffic was hell, and I'd forgotten to text her. When I walked through the door, I expected the usual, the scent of dinner, maybe Max wagging his tail, Laura at the kitchen counter sipping wine. Instead, the house was dark except for the light in the den. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, headphones in, and didn't even hear me come in. I stood there for maybe 20 seconds, watching her, waiting for her to look up. She didn't. When she finally did, she flinched like I'd startled her, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, hey. I thought you said you'd be home later." I hadn't, and I didn't say anything about it. Just told her traffic was bad and went upstairs to change. But it sat with me. That sort of thing keeps happening. I'll say something, and she won't remember. She'll laugh at a joke I haven't finished telling. She'll lock her phone more often, even when she's just setting it down beside her. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and noticed she wasn't in bed. Found her downstairs, sitting on the floor with Max, rubbing his ears in the dark. I asked if she was okay, and she said, "Yeah, just couldn't sleep. Needed some air." I wanted to believe that. I still do. But the truth is, Laura used to talk to me when something was wrong. Now she doesn't. What makes it harder is that nothing has technically changed. Our routines are the same. We still go out to eat. Still show up to birthdays and barbecues. Still smile for pictures. But behind all of that, there's a pause in her responses. A lack of warmth in her laugh. And I don't know if I'm just imagining it or if there's something she's keeping from me. The other night, I caught myself staring at her while she read in bed, wondering what she would say if I asked her, really asked her, what was going on. But I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to break the surface. What if I'm wrong? What if this is just life getting in the way, and I'm seeing shadows where there aren't any? Still, there's a part of me that's starting to flinch when I see her smile at her phone. A part of me that counts how many times she says she's meeting a client now. A part of me that's starting to wonder if I'm imagining things. Or if I'm the only one left imagining us. There's a silence between two people who love each other, and then there's the silence between two people who are pretending everything is still okay. We used to have the first. Lately, it feels more like the second. Last Sunday morning, Laura made pancakes. She hadn't in a while, and at first it felt like old times, me sipping coffee, her flipping pancakes while the dog circled underfoot hoping for scraps. But something about it felt staged. Like she was playing a role, not just being herself. She was overly cheerful, asking too many questions about my work schedule, smiling too wide when I told her a dumb joke. And when I leaned over to kiss her cheek while she stirred the batter, she flinched, not a lot, just enough that I felt it in my chest. She laughed it off like she was startled, but the space that opened between us in that second didn't close back up. We ate at the table. I told her about a new project at work and she nodded politely, but her eyes were somewhere else. She kept glancing at her phone on the counter, and at one point she got up mid-sentence to check it when it buzzed. When she sat back down, she didn't ask me to continue. I didn't remind her. The rest of that day passed like a dull echo. We watched a movie she picked, something romantic and slow, and she cried at the ending. I looked over at her, really looked, and thought about how hard it is to read someone's heart when you can't even hear their voice anymore. I used to know her expressions, her pauses, even the way she chewed her lip when something bothered her. Now it's like watching someone else's wife, living inside my house, wearing my Laura's face. One night that week, she said she was going to her mom's to help with some paperwork. Her mom lives about 45 minutes away, so I didn't think much of it. I told her to be careful driving and went back to watching the game. But 3 hours passed. Then 4. She didn't answer my text. When she finally came in close to midnight, I was half asleep on the couch. She smelled like wine and something floral, not her usual perfume, something lighter, sweeter. She smiled when she saw me awake and said, "You didn't have to wait up," kissed me on the forehead, and went straight upstairs. I watched her go, suddenly wide awake again. None of it is proof. I know that. Maybe she's just tired. Maybe I'm overthinking everything. But lately, even the dog has been acting strange, more restless, more clingy. He follows me around the house, sits by the door like he's waiting for something or someone to come back. Or maybe that's just me, projecting things onto him, needing to feel like someone else senses it too. There's no evidence. Just instincts. Just a growing weight in my gut that something isn't right. I've started waking up earlier, not because I need to, but because I can't sleep. She sleeps in longer now, doesn't stir when I get out of bed. When I return with coffee, she's usually already on her phone, scrolling through something she won't tell me about. We still say, "I love you," every day. But even that feels rehearsed lately. Like a line in a play we've both memorized but stopped believing in. And that's the part that keeps me up at night, not knowing what's wrong, but knowing something is. And realizing that, whatever it is, she won't let me see it. It's strange how easily you can start questioning your own reality when the person closest to you begins slipping behind a curtain you're not allowed to open. Lately, I've found myself hesitating before walking through the front door. I'll sit in the car for a few extra minutes, key in the ignition, just waiting. For what? I'm not sure. Maybe to gather myself, maybe to rehearse being normal. Either way, it's become routine. Just like everything else. Laura's been going out more. Not excessively, but enough that it's noticeable. Always something vague. Meeting a client. Quick stop at the store. Grabbing coffee with an old coworker. I'm not the jealous type. I never have been. But now, every time she walks out the door, I feel this weird tightness in my chest. I never say anything. I just smile, tell her to drive safe, and close the door behind her with Max standing beside me, ears perked like he's wondering the same thing I am. What bothers me more than her absences is how she is when she's here. Everything is taken on this brittle politeness. She's careful now. Almost too careful. She asks about my day, but doesn't seem to hear the answer. She laughs at things that aren't funny, touches my shoulder like someone afraid to get too close to a stranger. We still sleep in the same bed, but the space between us has turned into an invisible wall I can't reach across. Last Thursday night, she got dressed up more than usual for a supposed client dinner. I told her she looked great, and she smiled, but it wasn't her real smile. I've seen the real one. I fell in love with that smile. This one didn't reach her eyes. She lingered in front of the mirror longer than she needed to, adjusting her earrings, checking her hair. I remember watching her from the doorway, half tempted to say something. To ask, "Are you okay? Are we okay?" But the words felt too fragile. Like if I said them out loud, they might shatter what little still felt solid. She came back late again that night. Said she lost track of time, that the client was talkative. She was tired and just wanted to shower and go to bed. I nodded, told her I'd clean up the wine glass she left in the kitchen. She looked surprised for a split second, then said thanks and disappeared upstairs. That's when it hit me. She hadn't said anything about drinking wine before she left. It's not a damning detail, but it's another thread, another loose piece of string that doesn't tie up the way it used to. I've started doubting myself, and I hate that. I've always been a grounded person. Logical. Not the type to spiral or imagine worst-case scenarios without cause. But these days, I catch myself wondering where she really is when she says she's running errands. I start doing mental math. How long she's been gone, whether her stories match her timeline, whether her smile is real or just muscle memory. Maybe I'm going crazy. Or maybe I'm finally waking up to something I didn't want to see. What scares me most isn't the possibility that something's going on. It's that I might already know the answer, and I'm too afraid to ask the question. It was my cousin's birthday, nothing fancy, just a backyard get-together at my parents' place. My mom had insisted we come. "You both work too much," she said. "It's good for you to see family." I agreed, mostly because I hadn't seen my dad in a while and because I thought maybe, just maybe, Laura and I could enjoy ourselves for a night without the strange energy that had been hovering around us for weeks. Laura seemed light, almost giddy, as we got ready. She took longer than usual to do her hair, changed outfits twice, and even asked my opinion on which earrings looked better. I tried to match her mood, but I was already tense before we even pulled out of the driveway. Something about the way she hummed to herself in the passenger seat made me feel like I was a guest on a date she'd planned with someone else. The party started out normal. Cousins, uncles, aunts, kids running around the yard. My dad pulled me aside to show me the new grill he was proud of. I made the rounds, accepted a beer, laughed at a few jokes. Laura floated through the crowd like she was born for it, smiling, hugging, asking questions she already knew the answers to. She was magnetic, and I noticed people, especially my brother, gravitate toward her. Ben had always been the golden child in my family. Charming, funny, more socially agile than I ever was. He and Laura had always gotten along, maybe even a little too well, but I'd never thought anything of it. They were just the kind of people who made everything look easy. It happened about an hour in. I was heading inside to use the bathroom when I overheard them, Laura and my mom, talking in the laundry room, just around the corner. The door wasn't fully closed. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I swear. But the moment I heard my name, I froze. He's not a bad man, Laura was saying. But you know as well as I do, he's not Ben. I didn't breathe. My hands felt cold. My mother's voice followed, quieter but clear. Honey, I told you from the beginning. You deserve someone who gets you. Your energy, your passion. He was always the safe choice. But Ben, well, he's more your level. There was a pause. A beat. And then Laura laughed, soft and bitter. I know. It's just. I thought I could make it work. But now it feels like I'm living someone else's life. And when I'm with Ben, it's like I remember who I was supposed to be. I stood there like an idiot. My legs felt like stone. I must have gone pale because I remember gripping the wall to steady myself. My mother sighed. You're young. You don't have to trap yourself in something just because it looks good from the outside. We've all made mistakes. Laura responded, her voice sharper this time. I just feel like I wasted years playing it safe. Like he was my plan B, and I didn't even realize it until I tasted what real love felt like. And just like that, the ground under me broke apart. I didn't wait to hear more. I backed away, heart pounding, walked out through the side of the house and straight to the car without saying a word. I didn't even look back to see if anyone noticed. My hands were shaking as I turned the ignition. My mind was blank and boiling at the same time. My wife, had been sleeping with my brother. And my own mother not only knew but approved. I drove home like a man possessed, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from flying into pieces. When I got there, I locked the car and stood in the driveway for a full minute before heading inside. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there in the middle of our living room, staring at everything we'd built. And then I walked to the front door, changed the lock, and started throwing her things out the window. I don't remember walking upstairs after throwing out her clothes. It's a blur. I just remember watching a pair of her heels bounce off the driveway and feeling calm. Numb, but calm. Like something inside me had snapped back into place. Not because I felt okay. God, I didn't. But because, finally, I knew. No more guessing. No more tension in my chest every time she smiled at her phone. No more wondering who she really was when I wasn't in the room. She called 3 times before I even finished changing the locks. I didn't answer. I just stood at the door and waited for the deadbolt to slide into place, like a line being drawn in concrete. Then I started working through the house, room by room, gathering every scrap of her shoes, her jackets, her stupid collection of little ceramic animals she kept on the bookshelf. I opened the windows upstairs and started tossing everything out, one drawer at a time. She had a favorite sweater I knew she'd come looking for, bright green, with little stitched daisies on the collar. I tossed that one last. When I was done, I texted her 2 words. Don't come home. Then I put my phone on silent and set it face down. It wasn't just her I was done with. I didn't care if she cried. I didn't care if she screamed. I didn't care if Ben tried to explain it away, or if my mother said it wasn't what it sounded like. It was exactly what it sounded like. By midnight, I was at my desk filing a report with the IRS. Ben owns a small design firm, and I used to help with some of his early bookkeeping years ago when he was just starting out. I knew enough. Enough to know that he cut corners. Enough to know what to point at. I didn't even feel guilty doing it. If he was going to screw me behind closed doors, I was going to make sure he couldn't screw anyone else in broad daylight. Next morning, I sent the report with full documentation. If nothing came of it, fine. But if it did, let him explain that to the board. Then I blocked every number tied to my family. My brother, my mother, even my dad, who, to his credit, might not have known, but didn't stop it either. I wasn't going to be the man who begged to be heard while they closed ranks around the golden son and his second-hand wife. She showed up 2 days later. She tried her key, rattled the handle, knocked, pleaded through the door. I stayed silent on the other side, listening as she cried, then yelled, then went quiet. She tried to call from another number. I let it ring. She texted, "I can explain." Then again, "Please, just let me talk to you. This doesn't have to end like this." I never replied. Ben sent me an email, some pathetic, scrambled thing that started with "Bro, I know this looks bad," and ended with "I never meant to hurt you." I archived it without reading the middle. The truth is, he'd been hurting me long before I knew what was going on. I just hadn't put the pieces together. I didn't know them closure. I didn't know them calm conversation, or forgiveness, or a seat at my table. They set fire to my life and then expected me to keep serving dinner while the walls burned. No, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. I was just going to disappear from them, erase them the way they erased me. The part that surprises me the most is how easy it's been to ignore them. I thought I'd be devastated, torn, tempted to hear her out. But all I feel is relief. Not peace. Not yet. But space. And that's more than they ever gave me. There's no clean break from betrayal. No day where the grief politely exits and says, "Thanks for having me." It lingers. It leaks into everything. Your thoughts, your routines, even the way you hear your own name. But at some point, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about her for a full hour. Then a day, then a weekend. And that's how healing really starts. Not in some revelation, but in the quiet stretches where pain stops being the first thing you feel. I started doing the little things first. I painted the walls in the hallway, changed the lighting in the bedroom. Things she picked, I undid them. Not to be bitter, but to reclaim the space. I moved Max's bed into the room with me, got rid of the joint laundry basket, took down all the framed pictures where we looked like two people who were going to make it. Around that time, I started talking more to a woman I'd met at work months earlier, Kara. She was part of a different department, someone I'd bumped into in the break room now and then, both of us making coffee too late in the day. She'd always been kind, thoughtful in this quiet, low-key way that felt comforting without trying too hard. After everything happened, I guess I must have looked like hell because she brought me a bag of homemade cookies and just said, "Whatever it is, I hope it ends better than it started." That was it. No questions. No prying. Just understanding. We started having lunch together now and then, just light conversation, nothing personal at first. It wasn't romantic. I don't even think I wanted it to be. I was still carrying too much. But she made me laugh. And she never once asked about Laura or what happened. She let me be where I was, without pushing me to be anywhere else. Eventually, I told her the truth. Not all the details, just the shape of it. She listened. She didn't pity me, and she didn't try to fix anything. She just said, "I'm glad you didn't let it break you." There's something powerful about being seen like that. We started spending time outside of work. A museum exhibit, a hike with Max, a quiet dinner at a place where nobody knew either of us. There were no expectations, no pressure to call it anything. And for once, I wasn't trying to be someone else's version of a husband. I was just me, raw, uncertain, a little scarred, but still standing. I didn't tell her about the locks, or the IRS report, or the things I threw out the window. Not yet. Those parts belonged to another life. And the more I was with Kara, the more I realized I didn't want to keep dragging that life around with me. She wasn't my rebound. She wasn't a distraction. She was something else entirely. A reminder that life doesn't end just because a chapter does. The first time I kissed her, it wasn't fireworks or some movie moment. It was soft, unsure, real. And afterward, we didn't say anything. We just sat there with Max asleep at our feet and the TV playing low in the background, like life was slowly remembering how to be normal again. I don't know where it'll go. I don't need to. All I know is that for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm bracing for something to fall apart. I feel like I'm building something new. One quiet, steady brick at a time. It's been 4 months since the party. Since the door closed. Since I changed the locks, not just on my house, but on my life. Laura still tried, for a while. Emails, blocked numbers, messages that veered between rage and remorse. The last one said, "I miss what we had." And I believed her in a way. But I think what she missed was the version of herself that existed next to me. The safety, the simplicity, the certainty I offered while she drifted towards something or someone else. But that version of me is gone. Not bitter, just not there anymore. Ben's business went under. I don't know how much of that was the IRS report or how much was his own arrogance, but the doors are closed, and last I heard, he was selling equipment online and trying to rebrand. I never looked into the details. That chapter's done. My mother sent a handwritten letter last month, full of the kind of apologies that come too late. She said she never meant to choose sides, that she just wanted to see Laura happy. She wrote, "You'll understand someday when you're a parent." That part stung more than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because it reminded me of what I'd always suspected, that to her, I was reliable but replaceable. I didn't write back. My dad called once. I answered. We talked about the weather. Then he said, "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner." I told him I understood, but I didn't. Not really. I think there's a part of me that will always carry that silence. The way people stood still while my life was pulled out from under me. But all of that feels distant now. Like something that happened to someone else in a version of my life I no longer live in. Kara is still here. We're taking things slow, which is new for me. I used to think love had to be all-consuming to be real. That if it didn't burn you up, it wasn't deep enough. But this feels different. It's quiet. Honest. There are no games. No walls I have to climb to get to her. We laugh. We talk. Sometimes we don't say anything and just exist next to each other, and that's enough. Max loves her. That matters more than I expected. We spent last weekend at a cabin she found near the mountains. No reception, no news, just trees and quiet. I left my phone off. I didn't check emails. We sat on the porch and watched the sun dip below the ridge, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I was just there, present, breathing, whole. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't have some profound quote or grand ending to wrap this all up. But I know this. I survived the kind of betrayal that rewrites your entire understanding of love. I let go of people I thought would be with me forever. I saw the worst in those I trusted most, and I didn't let it destroy me. And now, on the other side of all that fire and silence, I found something better than vengeance. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from no longer needing to remember.